This is a lecture from OpenTuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
All right, this is the third lecture on budgets, and you'll see on the next page, paragraph 7, the types of budgets: fixed, flex, and flexible. Now, the fixed budget is what we normally think of as the budget. It's the original budget prepared usually for the coming year. The reason I say usually is although most businesses prepare budgets for the following year, they don't have to be done over a yearly period. They could be done for 6 months, 3 months, whatever they want. But the original budget is what we call the fixed budget. And that is the overall target for the year. You know, if we've done all our budgets and prepared a budgeted statement of profit or loss, and we've budgeted on a profit of 100,000, well, fine, that is our target for the year. Whatever happens, we want to make sure we find ways of making at least 100,000. However, when we're using budgets to control things, that can present a little problem, which is why we have flex budgets. And let me explain with an example. Look at example 2 on the next page. It says a company has prepared the following fixed budget for the coming year. Now, we'll look down the figures later, but you know, the forecast costs of $97,500, selling price $10 a unit, and so on. At the end of the year, the following costs have been incurred, and we've got details there of what actually happened. And I said one reason for doing budgets is for control, to be able to compare what actually happened with what we budgeted. Did we spend too much, or did we manage to save money, and so on? But comparing actual with budget, usually, in fact, on a monthly basis. Well, here we're doing it for the year, and let's just set it up. First of all, our original fixed budget, we'd budgeted on sales of 10,000 units, we'd budgeted on production of 10,000 units. That's only so I don't lose track. But what we're budgeting on, we are budgeting on sales revenue. It says the budgeted selling price is $10 a unit, so 10,000 units, 100,000. The costs, we're budgeting on materials of 50, labour 25, variable overheads 12,500, and fixed overheads of 10,000. So the budgeted costs 97,500, and therefore we were budgeting on profit of 2,500. So that was our budget. We then look at what actually happened. And it said, I'm leaving a space here for reasons that will become very obvious. We actually, it says at the end of the year, the following costs have been incurred for actual production of 12,000. So we produced 12,000 units. And further down, the actual sales were 12,000. And what actually happened, starting at the bottom, the sales revenue was 122,000. The costs, materials were 60, labour 28.5, variable 15, fixed 11. So the actual cost 114,500. And therefore, the actual profit 122 less 114, 7,500. Now that's fine, but back to where I was a few minutes ago, I said a reason for doing budgets is to be able to compare actual with budget. And if we compare materials, for instance, we budgeted on spending 50,000. We actually spent 60,000. We spent far more than we budgeted on. However, it would be ridiculous to say, okay, let's sack the materials manager. They've obviously done a bad job. They've spent too much money. Let's sack the labour manager. They should have spent 25. They spent 28.5. But surely that would be ridiculous. And why would it be ridiculous? Because the production, we produced more than we budgeted. We produced 12,000 instead of 10,000. And obviously, you'd expect, therefore, to have spent more on materials, more on labour. And it's not the materials manager. It's not his fault that we produce more units. If we produce more units, obviously we spend more. It's just not fair. It's not sensible to compare 60 with 50. And so if we're using the budget for control, we rewrite the budget. We what we call flex the budget. And we rewrite it for the actual level of activity, for the actual sales, the actual production. And looking at the original budget figures, if we had have sold 12,000, how much revenue should we have made? Well, the revenue, $10 a unit. We should have been selling at $10. We should have had revenue of 120. What about the costs? Well, materials. We budgeted 50,000 for 10,000 units. It should have been $5 a unit. We produced 12,000 units at $5 a unit. We should have spent 60,000. What about labour? We budgeted on 25,000, thinking we'd produce 10,000 units. It should have been $2.50 a unit. And how many did we produce? We actually produced 12,000. And so how much should we have spent at $2.50 a unit? We should have spent 30,000. What about variable overheads? We'd budgeted on 12,500, thinking we'd produce 10,000 units. It's $1.25 a unit. And so given we actually produced 12,000 units, how much did I expect to spend? At $1.25, we should have spent 15,000. Fixed overheads, of course, should stay fixed. We should have spent 10,000. And so, for what actually happened, the actual sales, the actual production, if everything had gone according to plan, the total costs would have been 115. And the total profit should have been 5,000. But now it makes sense to compare. Sales. Oh, all right, we've got 22,000 more than we originally budgeted, but given we sold 12,000 units, we should have had 120. We got 122. We've gained 2,000. What about materials? Again, we'd spent a lot more than the original budget, but it's because we produced more. Given we produced 12,000, we expect to spend 60. We did spend 60, no problem. What about labour? We spent more than we originally budgeted, but again, we produced more. And for the numbers we produced, we expected to spend 30. We only spent 28.5. We've saved money. We've saved 1,500. Whoever's in charge of labour has actually done a good job. Because again, it's not their fault we produced more units. We did produce more. They managed to spend less per unit. They've done a good job, not a bad job. Variable overheads, no problem. All right, we spent more because we produced more, but we'd expect now to spend 15, and we did spend 15. Things have gone perfectly. Finally, fixed overheads, well, of course, they should stay fixed at 10,000. Doesn't matter how many we produce. We've spent 11. Here we've overspent by 1,000. Now, before I go any further, these differences here, the difference between what actually happened and what should have happened, we call those differences the variances. Variance means difference. Secondly, sales we've actually gained. Labour we've gained because we spent less. Fixed overheads we've lost because we spent more. Well, standardly, we don't write pluses and minuses and things. If we've gained, if it's going to give us more profit, we write against it the letter F. F stands for favourable. And so sales, we should have had 120, we got 122. We've gained 2,000. It's going to give us more profit. It's favourable. Labour, we should have spent 30. We'd only spent 28.5. We've saved money. We've spent less. It's going to give us more profit. It's favourable. Finally, fixed overheads. We've overspent. 11 should have been 10. Losing us money, it would mean less profit. We write against it A, and the letter A stands for adverse. And of course, there is a little double check here. For our actual level of activity, we should have had 5,000. We got 2,500 more. But I know why. If I add these up, 2,000 more because we sold at a higher price. 1,500 more because we saved money on labour. 1,000 less because we overspent on fixed overheads, which comes to a net 2,500. Favourable. And so there we have used it for control, but I hope you see what I mean. Without repeating everything. For materials manager, he did spend more than original budget, but it's because we produced more. If we're going to use the budget for those purposes, to measure performance, to control, we need to rewrite the budget for the actual sales, actual production. And rewriting it is called the flexed budget. These variances, you'll see in the next chapter, this is very, very simple here, but we can be required to do a lot more analysis on the variances, a lot more work on them, but that's the next chapter. Here, I hope it's clear basically what we're looking at. It also says, part B, says summarise in a form suitable for management. What it's getting at here, and again, something I'll look at in more detail in the next chapter, is management expected $2,500 profit. That's what they expected. And what they're really concerned about is why was the actual profit more or less. Here it was more at 7.5. What they're concerned about is why. Why is it different from budget? And so standardly, the management accountant will give them a little statement explaining. And it'll start off saying, well, the original budget profit was 5,000. No, it wasn't. It was 2,500. I'm sorry. And again, management will want to know, why was the actual profit different? Where did we gain? Where did we lose? Well, the most obvious reason for the profit being different is we sold a lot more units. Obviously, if you sell more units, you immediately expect more profit. And if everything else had gone perfectly, selling and producing 12,000 units, the profit should have been 5,000. So we get an extra, the difference, 2,500, because we've sold more units. We call that the sales volume variance. An extra 2,500 favourable, it's more profit. So we should have got 5,000. Why didn't we get 5,000? Well, we've got there a list of what happened. One reason we got more is because we charged a higher price. We should have been charging $10 a unit and got 120. We must have charged a higher price to get 122. We say we have a sales price variance. It gave us an extra 2,000. What else happened? Materials, perfect. But labour. We spent less than we expected on the flexed budget. We gained 1,500. Labour variance. $1,500. And finally, what else happened? Fixed overheads. We overspent. By 1,000. And so how much profit did we actually make? 5 plus 2, 7, 8.5, 7,500. There is the actual profit. Now, don't worry too much about that, because variances really are the next chapter, where, as I said, we'll do a lot more work on them, and I'll talk more about this statement. The real objective here was to explain what a flexed budget was and why it was important. But even so, I think on that alone, you should be able to see why management would be interested in this statement. Their main concern is, why is the actual profit different from budgeted? They expected 2,500. Why wasn't it 2,500? Well, we've now listed all the various reasons. Where we saved money, obviously we'll be pleased. Where we've overspent, obviously we'll want to know why. What was it went wrong? However, more about that in the next chapter. However, the flexed budget, remember, the flexed budget is where we rewrite the original. Well, I'll write it down. It's where we rewrite the original fixed budget for the actual level of activity. And by actual level of activity, I mean actual sales, actual production. As far as flexible is concerned, most people regard the two as the same, the two words as meaning the same. It's simply that a flexible budget, you see, you don't know what's actually going to happen, obviously. We don't know in advance whether the actual sales and production will be as budget at 10,000, or whether they end up being more or they end up being less. It's only afterwards we can find out how many we actually sold and produced. So a flexible budget is where you've prepared the budget in a way that can be easily flexed. You know, that you've separated out the fixed and the variable costs. So we could easily, perhaps using a spreadsheet, produce a flexed budget for any levels of activity. So it's a budget that's easily flexed. Okay, well, we're not there yet. I'll stop this lecture, but the next one we'll look at something I did mention earlier, cash budgets. But that's the next lecture. I'll remind you what we mean by them, and we'll go through an example as to how they're prepared.